Ross Macleod, thank you for being here. You asked a question on X this morning. Are you a good putter? So let me ask you, are you a good putter?
Yeah, I believe I am. Yeah, quite a good putter. Yeah, I don't play that much these days, and I don't compete anymore. So putting when it matters, I guess, is a bit more unknown because the couple of times I have had like a card in my hand the last few years, I've noticed, because I went so long without putting where it really mattered. I did have a couple of rounds, and I was like, yeah, it is a bit different. So, but yeah, no, I'm quite confident in my sort of fundamentals. And historically, I was a sort of, it was an amazing putter, but it was never a weakness in my game. I had other weaknesses.
Sure.
So yeah.
So what is different about putting when it matters versus what's the alternative? When you say putting when it matters, are you saying most of your putting is when it doesn't matter, I guess?
Yeah, because a lot of the golf I do play now, it isn't competitive golf. It's just hard to, I don't know. I find it hard anyway to really recreate that. You know how like maybe some golfers can really tap into that. They just every time they're on a golf course, they're trying the same amount, they feel the same. I've always felt like that a little bit different in competition, and sometimes I've seen that work. Like you can actually feel really good and play really well, but a lot of the times, I feel like I probably can play your worst golf and do your worst stuff under the heat of competition. So.
Mm, yeah. What happens to what do you think happens to putting specifically? What changes? Why does it change when you're under the gun, under pressure, uh, putting specifically?
So I always kind of feel like if I see tendencies in a lesson environment, say someone's whether they're a pull putter, a push putter, whether, bad aim bias or poor acceleration profile, my feeling is that whatever I see there, it probably could be worse in competition, under pressure. I kind of work off that assumption that there's a good chance, right? What I'm seeing here is probably worse. I just feel like under pressure, we just do things, don't we? Like we commit errors that we sometimes can't believe we did after the event.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of exaggerates whatever you
Yeah.
do. If you're a great putter, it might exaggerate how good you are, and it might
Hmm.
focus you more. But if you struggle with certain things, you have certain unhelpful tendencies. It might exaggerate those in the poor direction.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
When you have played competitively, or you said kind of recently you've played some golf where it mattered. What what is your tendency? What's your personal tendency? Push pull setup issues. Do you have issues like that get exaggerated?
Yeah, I would say in terms of face control, I was more of a push putter than a pull putter. I've very rarely come across a golfer, even some really good golfers I've coached, pros and elite amateurs, who don't have a bias towards one side. So I'd be more on the push side of things, and bit of a left aim bias on left to right putts. I'm a left-handed golfer,
Mm.
and I tend to aim them a bit high as well. So, yeah, I would say that. And my tendency in terms of my kind of rhythm and tempo is, I think in the last few years it's been more. I can sometimes quit on the stroke, which is actually something I quite often talk about on social media that people don't really do. Like they don't decel. Everybody worries about decel, and I'm like, trust me, I measure putting strokes all the time. Nobody really decels, even though people worry about it. It's the opposite problem. But I think I've spent so long telling people not to accelerate so much in the downswing, that I actually like did sometimes get a little bit tentative, and I think that exaggerated when it mattered because when you're just playing on your own or with some friends, and you're rolling your 10 footers, not really carrying that much, then all of a sudden it matters because okay, you want to hold the 10 footer, but you don't want to blow it 4 feet by either and things like that. So then I would get like maybe a bit more tentative on parts like that. I definitely felt my speeds got worse under any sort of pressure, and it was more leaving putts a bit short because there was so many years of playing golf where it didn't really matter if a three putt, where it didn't, so you'd be more confident to give it a go. So I'd say that was probably the biggest one. Would
Mm.
be, yeah, just getting a bit tentative.
Okay. So this brings up an interesting kind of dynamic between uh, the physical part of putting leading to mental struggles versus mental struggles leading to the physical struggles in golf. So we're 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 kind of straddling the line of, well, your tendencies can cause mental struggles because you're worried about leaving it short, which causes you to stress about leaving it short, or your tendency is to decel or to be tentative on the through stroke
Hmm.
or whatever, which affects you mentally. But also, when you get under pressure, it causes your tendency to get worse. So, uh, and you actually said something recently on X. Also, uh, this is a quote of the tweet. You said, "Your bad putting isn't mental. Your mental struggles are caused by your bad putting, which is caused by the fact that your grip, posture, ball position, green reading, face control, and acceleration profile is not in a good place." So you come at it from a place of uh, these mechanical, actual physical things with putting are off, which causes your mental game to be off. Why do you think that?
I think it's just from coaching putting now for about 12 years. I started getting interested in it and gradually building up. I've probably only been an actual full-time putting coach, as in that's all I do for, it's getting to about 5 years now. The years before that, I was still doing a bit of swing coaching and things like that to just keep my diary busy enough. And then I was able to. So, anyway, after all the putting strokes I've measured now, I just feel like so many golfers, even good golfers, good amateur golfers, just haven't put enough time into their putting, as in they've put hardly any. So, they're kind of in trouble before they even move the putter. And I'm not an obsessive technique guy that right we need to break tear apart your backswing, your transition, your downswing. Sometimes you'll go a bit deeper than others with people, but even just basics of a good setup that puts you in a good position to actually maneuver the putter using better parts of the body. Most people don't even get past that hurdle, even good golfers, because they've been kind of led to believe that good putting is just about feel and about good mindset. And I always say as well that if somebody puts great, I don't care what they do. But I've also seen a lot of people that have done well with putting with that kind of approach, but it does catch up to them as well. You might coach a really good amateur player in their 50s who is a bit baffled. They come and see you and they're like, I've never had to really care that much about my putting, and I've always been an all right putter, but it's really like slipping away from me. And they're the classic people who think, I think it's just in my head. I think it's in my head. And then I'm like, measure their stroke, observe them putt, and I'm like, well, look, you're pulling everything 3 degrees. Your backswing length and speed doesn't change from a 10 footer to a 25 footer, but what does change is how you just really accelerate through the ball. Or and then look at your posture is set up in a way that the top half of your upper body can't be involved in the stroke really. And I'm like, yeah, you've putted well for maybe 20 years despite that, but now it's catching up to you, and maybe it's time for a change. And then and I've seen some people do great with that, but I've also seen some people they were struggle because it's trying to change 30-year habits and things like that. But I've seen people push through and get through that, and funnily enough, some of the guys that have really pushed through that I've dealt with are the guys that play for like Scotland. There's like a senior. I'm sure it's pretty competitive in America as well because I know a couple of guys that have gone to America to compete in US senior amateur and things like that. I've worked with them and like yeah, it's no surprise these are the guys that are because they're still open to learning and things.
Right.
So probably deviated a wee bit from your
No,
question,
sure.
but
Yeah.
yeah, like I just believe maybe it's the coach I've got a bias in me that I've got a bias, but I do believe in just making it a bit easier because I don't think it's difficult to just have a good setup and some solid fundamentals. You don't need to obsess with technique or obsess with it, but decent, solid fundamentals, and then
Yeah.
go practice the skills of speed and I just believe then there's a better chance you're in a better place to have good mindset for putting.
Mm, okay. Yeah. You kind of say, all right, get these things that are measurable and very clear. Get these things solid, like
Hmm.
setup, grip, uh, all these things, and get those really good. Let's check those boxes, and then we can say, all right, if you're still really struggling, okay, maybe it's something mental. Maybe it's uh, you need to make it too much, or you're scared of three putting or something. But we
Hmm.
can't we can't rule out your actual putting stroke or your technique until you get it right. Right? We need to like
Hmm.
get that dialed in so that we can say, okay, that's not it. Now we can
Hmm.
say, okay, what are the mental things? Right? Is that how you
Hmm.
kind of see it?
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's it is difficult to often to know, okay, am I is it is it all in my head? And so let's say a player has checked those boxes. They've got a really good setup. Grip is good. Looks like they're on camera in you know inside on a putting mat. They're dialed. They're really good. But then when they
Hmm.
get out into pressure, then they struggle. So then they come to you and say, "I think it's all in my head." How would you
Hmm.
talk to that player? What would you work through there?
Hmm. Do you know though that would be very rare in
Uh,
my experience that happens.
really?
There are obviously people that are struggling, and then you're looking at them pat and going, "Gosh, you shouldn't be struggling." But I really don't see that often. I think as well, like because people can putt quite well in bursts, with what I would deem not very good fundamentals, by just having like decent fundamentals, and then it would probably usually be things like, well, what does your practice look like? Because technically there's not much holding you back. If you're not getting the performance, what does your practice look like? And then they might tell you they don't really practice, or this is what they do, and I'm like, well, that's not bad, but why don't we look at doing more stuff like this? And but yeah, I don't think it's likely if somebody is fundamentally looks really solid and then also practices well isn't going to get good. You're not going to. Nothing's guaranteed. They should at least see some sort of sign of good putting at times. I always try and tell people to just accept the fact that you're going to putt bad at times. The same as all golf. You can't. Nobody does it well all the time, do they?
Mm-mm. Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I mean, look
Yeah.
at some of the slumps some of the best players go through, and they're working, they're working really hard, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The best players have the best fundamentals. They've got the coaches. They have the practice. Right. Everything is completely dialed in, and then they can still struggle relative to their own past skill, relative to other players at their level. Right. They're still even their bad putting is better than our
Yeah.
best putting. So
Hmm.
oftentimes, and that brings up another element that I wanted to take us was what is that true? I made the statement of okay, a tour player's bad putting is better than our best putting. Does is it possible for a 20 handicapper to be as good as a tour player at putting while still being terrible at other stuff. Do you think that's possible?
I think you could get maybe closer. I don't know about as good, but yeah, like I do think I think it's I remember a couple of years ago Lou Stagner, who's been on your show, hasn't he?
Hmm.
What was he told me? He reviewed the putting performance in the Arcos database of, I hope I don't butcher this,
Hmm.
10, I think it was all the 10 handicaps. And was it the top 2% of them in putting terms were putting as good as scratch golfers, and the worst 2%, it might have been 5% or something, but the worst 5% were putting like 20 handicappers. So, okay, it's not big numbers, but there's 10 handicappers out there that putt like scratch golfers and also putt
Yeah.
like 20 handicappers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, I'd love to get my hands on those guys putting like 20 handicappers because
Yes.
they must be hitting the ball pretty good for 10 to be putting like 20 and
Yes.
playing off 10. So I'm
Yes.
like, and for me, they would not need a lot of help really to be able to putt even like a 10 handicap.
Yeah.
From my experience, I mean, I see golfers like that, that I'm like, that's my favorite student, whether they're
Yeah.
a scratch that putts like a 5 or a 10 that putts like a 20 or, they're my best people because they could just shoot better scores so easily. Like,
Yeah.
I do think putting is lower hanging fruit than, fixing a bad slice off the tee or something like that.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. So when you say lower hanging fruit, you mean it's simpler to go from putting like a 20 handicap to putting like a scratch. It's simpler to make that difference than hitting the ball like a 20 handicapper and hitting the ball like a stretch. Is that what you're saying?
I would say so, yeah. I would say so because it's just like, when you're doing lessons with people and you're explaining to them, look at the way you're standing to the ball there. Look at how, upright your lower back is. You're so close, like all these little things. I'm like, before you've even moved the putter, you're kind of hampered. A couple of fixes, and all of a sudden, yeah, they go. I'm not saying that nothing's easy in golf, is it? But I do see people get, sometimes when I do a little interview with people, or if it's an online lesson, I get them to send me some background info and, their golf and their putting in general. And then we start measuring their putting stroke if it's in person or I'm looking at video online. And sometimes right away you're just like rubbing your hands together because I'm like, oh man, this person's going to improve so quickly, so easily because that person's just what I would deem very far off because, and you can just tell straight away they've never worked on their putting, and some of them as well have worked on other areas of their game, and they're like even better because they understand the process of working on your game. They just haven't done it with putting. I even get good junior golfers like
Yeah.
that have worked really hard on their games except putting. Some of them even international level players, and I'm like, they have all their stats as well, and their putting's way behind. And it's like, could you not see the correlation between the fact that you're not worked on your putting and it's worse than the rest of your game?
Mm.
So yeah, it's like that's my ideal student.
Yeah. So why do people tend to go to swing instructors first if putting is the lowest hanging fruit, the simplest way to, you could kind of gain 5 shots quick, depending on your handicap, of
hmm
course. Or, if you're a really good player, you could gain a shot off your handicap
hmm
relatively quick compared to a shot in other parts of your game, unless you're already really, really good at it. But
hmm
why do people go to swing first? And when putting is a simple, maybe not easy, but simple, low hanging fruit? Why do you think?
hmm I don't know. I think there's probably a few reasons. I mean, one of the things I would say, I know that in Scotland, and I would imagine it's similar elsewhere, is if a golfer did decide I want a putting lesson, it's not like there'll be a putting coach at their golf club or their local driving range. Like there really isn't many putting coaches about. Scotland's quite a small country, but we do have quite a few golfers. There's other guys in Scotland I think that show an interest in putting. I might be wrong. I don't know of anyone else that's like a completely 100% full time. There might just be, and they don't have a social media presence or that I don't know of. But being it's quite a small country, so there's not many putting coaches about. And then I know when I ask people, have you ever had a putting lesson? They usually say no, or they say yes. I've done like my swing coach will go on the putting green with me for 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the end of a lesson. Um, so it's not easy to get putting lessons. But then if people took that information and 10 more guys in Scotland decided tomorrow to start being putting coaches, there's not actually, I don't think there's that much work for people because people don't take putting lessons as well.
Mm,
So that's why, I don't know. And I know there's more putting coaches in America and bigger country, and but I wonder if per head of population it's a similar number.
right.
So there's that. I think as well there's a lot of myths around putting that it's like it's not really something that you should be taught. I remember a few years ago somebody came in to me for a putting lesson and he said I told my buddy I was going for a putting lesson and he laughed at me. I was like, what? He goes, yeah. He's like, what do you mean a putting lesson? Like, how can you get taught putting? Because they just think you just grab a putter and you just go, you just hit the ball, and you're either good at it or you're not, or if you're not, you go and maybe practice a bit, but you just basically hit putts till you get better at it, as if there's nothing really to be taught. So I wonder if a lot of people think in those terms. Whereas having taught the swing on top putting, I don't really see it's that obviously it's very different in terms of what you do, but it's yeah, you teach how to get better at it, and then there's technical improvements, setup improvements,
Mm,
working on the skills.
yeah,
So yeah, I don't know if there's a lot of myths hanging around,
sure.
or
Well,
maybe that's the scar tissue of yeah, people three putt quite a lot, but they they it hurts them more when they lose golf balls,
right.
in water or in trees or whatever.
More
So they want to
embarrassing.
get that sorted first. That's what gives them more anxiety when they're
Yeah.
on the first tee and there's people around and I don't know as well. There's more, there's driving, there's iron play, there's wedges, there's maybe more. I don't know,
Sure. Sure. Yeah,
but
the just your scorecard is weighted maybe more towards non-putting, but putting
mhm.
holds an incredible weight. Uh, is putting the most important part of the game, do you think?
I don't ever say that. I don't ever claim that. I think the level of golfer you become is probably more determined by your ball striking.
Okay.
I would say that because I get a lot of people that come in for lessons and they say, "Oh yeah, I thought I better come for a lesson. It's half the game after all." And I've never claimed that. I know that it might statistically be sometimes 42% or whatever of the shots, but a lot of them are little
Yeah.
6-inch tap-ins that you can't do much wrong with. So, I just try and get people to care about their putting,
Hmm.
like just care about your game, like care, you want to be good at all of it, or get better at all of it. And the worst thing for me as a golfer is having a big weakness, whether
Right.
that's in your iron play, your driving, or your putting. So I primarily deal with people where it's their big weakness, and they're not happy golfers because if you're just, a little bit weak in all departments, that's not great. But when you feel like you're doing a lot good on the court, hitting quite good drives, hitting good shots on or near the green, short game feels all right, but then you just can't hole a putt or you're three putting like that. Those are the most frustrated golfers. Same as a guy that just cannot hit a drive, he can't get off the tee, but the rest of his game's all right. He's just
Hmm.
having a big weakness. So yeah, and I just think it's all important. So
Yeah.
work on it all.
Yeah. Yeah, so I I don't know if it's by nature of just what I do, but I work with a lot of really good players, high level competitive players and whatever. I also
Mm,
work with some not so great players too, but the just handicap wise. But the common theme among really good players is great ball striking, don't get the most out of their game with putting. They don't score.
yeah.
They don't get the ball in the hole, like is what they always say. So they get really frustrated about that. And it's never, no one ever mentions, man, I've been seeing my putting coach about it. I'm working really hard on my alignment. They don't talk about any of that. They just go straight to, yeah, putting just stresses me out. It's in my head. They go straight.
Right.
And of course,
Yeah.
I'm a mental coach, so that's what we're talking about anyway. But
Yeah.
they never, they're super happy to talk about. Yeah, I go to my swing instructor. We've got that. It's really good. Launch monitor numbers are great. Blah blah blah. But they never talk about even putting practice. They don't even talk about it. So it is. It's for whatever reason, putting is it's probably the lowest, simplest hanging fruit that no
Mm-hmm.
one picks off the tree. I mean, myself
Mm-hmm.
included. I got I have gotten to a pretty high level in golf, in amateur golf, and what you said was, yeah, my instructor took me onto the putting green 5 minutes at the end of the lesson. So my coach Robert, he knows a ton about putting, but is just never. I never asked him to, hey, can we work on my putting? I always thought it was, I just need to log more time on the greens. I just need to hit
Mm-hmm.
more putts, and I whatever flaws I have I'll just overcome them by just hitting more putts, practicing putting, and
Mm-hmm.
practicing putting well intentionally. But I never worked on setup, alignment, whatever. Very, very, very little. And I
Mm-hmm.
got to a decently high level, and I just didn't care that much about my putting in that way. So
Mm-hmm.
that's it's such an interesting thing. You're in a good spot, I think, to you're kind of in on the ground floor of, okay, eventually everyone's going to have putting coaches, just like they have swing coaches, and they're starting to get mental coaches. And well, I've got to have a putting coach. I need to go see a putting
Mm-hmm.
guy, and because that is a super important part of my game. My swing instructor doesn't specialize in it. This guy does. So anyone listening should probably do that. Should probably go see Ross, go see the guy at your club who does specialize in putting if that happens to be a thing. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that um, one of my players actually goes to you. I won't mention his name, but he said, I want you to ask Ross, why did he specialize in putting? Why did he move from kind of swing instruction or doing it all just to putting? Was it because you were a great putter and you thought I could do this well, or I was actually a bad putter, so I started working on my own putting and got better at it? Why did you just go putting?
So when I did my PGA training with the Britain and Ireland PGA in 2009, I started. So your 3 year program where you're working usually at like a golf club, it kind of covers, it touches on everything. So there's coaching, there's retailing, business, even like club
Yep.
repairs, custom fitting, and sports science and things like that's coming into it, and then so you kind of do everything. So the ideally by the end of the 3 years, you get an idea about what you want to do. So I pretty much felt right away it was going to be coaching.
Yep.
Like being a club pro at a golf club never appealed to me. Um, I see that job as like you've got to be a bit of a jack of all trades. You do all these, and some people are really suited to that. The idea of doing one thing would drive them mad.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like coaching, and then I felt within coaching, I'd rather try and get really good about one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought the putting and short game. I think if I hadn't been a putting coach, I probably would have gone down short game. I don't know why that appealed to me. I think part of it was wanting to specialize, maybe wanting to do something less people do, and I wouldn't say my putting and short game was the strongest part of my game, but it might have been. I wouldn't. I'm not a big guy. I'm never a long hitter. I played links golf growing up in the 1990s when nobody really talked about hitting it far, and
Mm-hmm.
so we had to swing it easy to keep it under the wind and all that type of thing. And so, like, I think ball striking was never a really strong part of my game. So short game, and it was maybe by kind of accident. So when I qualified, I was like, right, I'm gonna look to learn some stuff about probably putting or short game. And one of the first things I saw, so this was in 2013 about I think it was about April 2013. Phil Kenyon, who's like probably the best known putting coach in the world, at that time, he was still a tour coach and he had some of the top players in his stable. He wasn't quite maybe as busy on the tours he is today. So he was doing a mixture of things. And one of the things he would offer was PGA pros could go and spend a day with him. And I did that. So you would be like four of you or six of you would go and spend a day with him at his kind of headquarters in the kind of northwest of England. So I remember I took a train down and did that, and that really like opened my eyes. 'Cause he had his like Sampat lab. He would show you like it was at the time he was working with maybe like Henrik Stenson and Martin Keimer, and he'd worked with like Darren Clark and some real top players, and he would be talking about this is what we've been working on and this is what we worked on, and he would measure our putting strokes, and I just found it like really interesting. I remember going home that day going, yeah, I think I'm definitely going to give putting a go. And then as well, I couldn't think of anyone else in Scotland who was that interested in
Right.
putting. So I thought, maybe there's a great market here. But it did take me about 7 years from that day to be a full-time putting coach.
Sure.
Probably 2, 3 years later, I was still doing more. I'd have been like calling myself a putting, like all my social media handles had changed to being called putting, and I was marketing my putting, and that was what I wanted to do. But I was still doing more swing lessons and putting lessons at that point, and junior coaching and things like that.
Mm.
So I think it was maybe even part of that. If Phil Kenyon hadn't have been offering that course that I could go on, I might have done something else. So there's just a little bit of fate to it, I guess.
Huh.
But the idea of specializing was appealing to me. Try and get good at one thing. I think my brain suits that.
Yeah.
Whereas I've got friends and there's drive them mad even to just do golf lessons probably.
Right.
They would just not want to do just golf lessons, let
Mm.
alone specialize in one area of golf lessons. People like variety, whereas I like to focus on one thing.
Mm. I love that. I love a specialty. It feels like I'm gonna limit my customer base by just narrowing in on just this one thing, but
Hmm.
I think you gain customer base because you there's when we look across the landscape, I'm not going to spend the money to go see Phil Kenyon, right? I don't even know if you can do that now. He might have himself closed
I
off.
doubt it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
If I was him,
yeah.
I wouldn't take
Hmm.
random people like me. But uh, so you look across the landscape and say, I really need to work on my putting. What's the best way to do that? My guy is not. He's selling shirts in the pro shop and then giving me lessons on the side or
Hmm.
whatever. He's not going to be the guy. So I need a putting coach. So I think that's just a random business thought. I think that's better. That's
Hmm.
what I'm trying to do is mental
Hmm.
game, and
Yeah.
it's helped me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the more you do something, if you're putting in some effort, you're going to get better at it.
Right.
So, and then as well, the more you learn, like the more experience, like the most I've learned in my job is from doing it, the
Mm.
job.
Yeah.
You can go and read books, and even the day I spent with Phil Kenyon, I learned a lot that day, but it was just an intro to get me started. The real learning is the thousands and thousands of pine strokes I've measured of all levels of golfer, along with then giving them lessons, getting the feedback of how what's working, what's not working, and then just over the years you do hopefully, you're just honing your skills all the time and learning all the time. And putting stroke's not that physical a move, is it? The putter head's only going to move a few inches back and through type of thing. But it's amazing how even today I'm still learning,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
like, yeah, I bet if I could sit and chat and spend another day with Phil Kenyon, I could learn way, way more because he's been doing putting coaching 25 years or something, and he's worked with, he's working with the best player in the world and other best players in the world. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's still a lot to learn. That's why I've not reached a point yet where I'm like, right, I'm kind of bored with this putting because you're still learning, and that's quite good.
What is Phil Kenyon good at or better at than you? Why are you not working with Scottie Scheffler?
I don't know actually. I mean, he'll have accumulated more. One thing I would say about people like Phil Kenyon is I think they're different. he would probably be like the Scottie Scheffler, the Rory McIlroy equivalent. Why is Scottie Scheffler better than whoever's ranked 150? I think there's people that like I would guess Phil Kenyon works, you know, 16 hours a day,
Mm,
and like
yeah.
I think guys like that are just built a bit different. I mean, even now he is building a bit of an empire. Phil Kenyon, he has places in around the UK. He's got places in, I think he opened one in Turkey last year. He
Oh,
opened one in, he's got a place in America somewhere. Is it South Carolina?
but I'm not sure.
I
That's
think he's got
that's
a
how
place there
little
that,
I think about putting.
yeah, and he was advertising a job in Sheffield, which is a different area of England to where he's from, and I think he's got a place in London. So like, even though he's coaching the best player in the world right now and probably turning away student, he's still on the side of that
Yeah,
thinking about, oh, like, I just think some people are built different, aren't
yeah,
they? And that's why they reach the very, very top.
sure.
Um, maybe he's really smart as well. Like
Probably.
there's, but I think I'm sure he's very intelligent. But I would imagine work ethic plays a big part, and
Hmm.
then just time spent as well. Like he was mentored by Harold Swash,
Hmm. Never heard of
who
Harold
is
Swash.
he's gone now. He's passed away. He was Phil Kenyon. I've listened to Phil Kenyon on a few podcasts over the years, and he talked about Harold Swash was his original kind of mentor. I think he was a family friend. He
Hmm.
was the guy, I think, if I'm getting this right, he started Yes Putters. Remember them?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They were his putters, I'm sure,
Huh.
and that's why Phil Kenyon started out with Yes Putters as well, and then
Sure.
uh, yeah, so he was mentored by Harold Swash, so that got him his
Yeah.
start, I think,
Yeah.
and then he's stuck with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably right place, right time, working with this
Mhm.
player, and then they recommended, word of mouth over to this player, and you level up over
Yeah.
time, right? If you
Mhm.
if you if you start working with um, a player who's, you know, 100th in the world, they're not like the name, but
Mhm.
and they do well because of you, then they recommend or
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah, that's there's probably that too. But
Mhm.
yeah, enough business talk. That is the stuff interests me because
Yeah.
I do wonder. Okay, why is that guy way up there? He doesn't
Mhm.
seem that much better than me at what he does. But yeah,
Mhm.
so left turn. Uh, how do you measure the quality of putting during a round? Do you measure the length of the first putt and then the number of putts? Like, how do you think about putting stats? Like, if you were gonna design a putting stat program, how would you do it?
Mhm. I like it when golfers will use strokes gained. I
Yeah,
don't think strokes gained's perfect, but it's the best that we have and will give us the best indication.
yeah,
Obviously compared to counting putts
yeah,
and going off your feel. I don't
yeah.
think I hate counting putts as much as I know it's not great. I know there's holes in it, but it's better than nothing.
Mm,
You have 28 putts. It's probably pretty good. You have 36 putts, 38 putts. It's probably not good.
sure.
But yes, when it's around that 31, 32, it's not probably telling us a lot.
Right.
And obviously, um, but yeah, I think if you can get your strokes gained, a lot of people use RCOS. I use shot scope, so that gives you the tags on your clubs. I do think to do it right, it takes editing after the round.
Yeah.
It's GPS. It's not going to be that accurate with putting. So I personally, I'll take a note of my footage
Yeah.
so that I can edit it, and it might not be the best, most accurate either.
Right.
I'll try and pace out my putts. Sometimes I'll even pace it out after I've hit it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's maybe you to go first,
Yeah. Don't
and
have
you can't really
time.
just
Yeah.
start pacing out this putt from the hole on a 50-foot putt or
Sure. Sure.
something.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'll putt and then I'll pace it on the way. Um, but yeah, I think strokes gained. I mean, there's apps you can use where you can just input it afterwards. You don't have to have shot scope
Right.
tags or Arcos tags, but they would be the probably best options,
Yeah.
I would say,
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
because you get a lot of it done for you.
Yeah.
And then the I know that shot scope you'll get compared to the level. So if you're a scratch golfer, you can compare yourself to a scratch golfer type of
Hmm.
thing,
Hmm.
and then see where you are from that point of view.
Okay. Okay.
Because I reckon there's a lot of people out there that they probably think they're better than they are, and there'll be some thinking they're worse than they are because they're not doing that.
Right.
I reckon there's a lot of golfers that maybe think they're better putters than they are
Yeah.
in terms of they're not bad. It's not like they're really, when you're really bad, if you know what I mean. But yeah, they don't realize they are throwing away a couple of shots compared to what they should be. But because it doesn't feel that bad, they're not doing anything about it,
Yeah. Yeah, they're kind of
and they just
lukewarm. They're not great, not terrible, but they
mm,
they are losing a shot and a half strokes gained. They don't know that because
yeah,
they're not taking stats, but they
yeah,
feel okay about it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and I think, and then they're not really doing much about it, whereas they could be, and it could make a difference.
Right. Yeah, that is
Mm.
interesting. So walk me. You mentioned pacing off putts. Walk me through a good putting pre-shot routine. Like, how do you read putts when you get behind the ball? What are you doing when you're over the ball? What are you thinking about? What are you looking? Walk me through maybe your putting pre-shot routine or a good one.
Hmm. So I've probably been influenced a bit by, have you ever heard of quiet eye
Yes.
stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it originated from Canada. Is it Joan Vickers?
Okay. I'm not
Uh,
sure.
she was, or is it? I actually bought the textbook a few years ago. I lent it to somebody, never got it back. It was called Quiet Eye Perception Cognition, something like that. But it didn't just look at putting or just look at golf. It looked at different things.
Hmm.
But I think within golf it just looked at putting. But it looked at things like that, like free throw shooting in basketball. It's
Hmm.
a kind of similar task, isn't it? Where you're stationary and you have to pull the trigger. As opposed to, like the rest of basketball where it's very reactionary to, it's all chaotic and happening. And even other areas of golf, which would be similar, but she, for some reason, chose putting. So I like that stuff. I haven't looked into it in years, but I read about it years ago, and then so my pre-shot routine would be around, that would be more about how you pull the trigger, like when you're over the ball. You've done your read, and you're basically, I would like to have a last look at the hole. So I'm ready. I've aligned myself. I like to put the putter in first and then my body. I think that's a big one
Hmm.
that can help a lot of people. I think a lot of people will put their body down first and say their body's aligning a little bit left of where it should be. They then put the putter down and the putter looks square and feels square, but it's not.
Hmm.
So getting a lot of golf is a little aiming tip I'm throwing in there, like because a lot of golfers, if they align the putter first, it makes a big difference to aim.
Hmm.
So I'll align my putter first, and then my body, and then
Yeah.
when I'm ready, pretty much ready, I'll take a last look at the hole, but it won't be a quick glance. It'll be like a 2 second look. I think from memory, this was what Joan Vickers found, that good putters tended to take a good look. Watch Tiger Woods putt. He takes a good look. Cam Smith as well takes a good last look.
Hmm.
Focusing in on your target. And some people might look at the hole. Some people say they're aiming 3 feet left of the hole. They might look 3 feet left of the hole, type of thing. So that might be up to individual, but a good last look, and then they'll come back to the ball, and what I would do is I would take a good look at a dimple, try and focus on a dimple on the ball that's kind of at the top of the ball and slightly to the back,
Hmm.
and just put my focus on that dimple, and that would take about 2 seconds as well. And then that's me. I'll execute the putt, and while the putter's in motion, I'm just keeping my focus on that dimple.
Hmm.
Um, I don't want to be looking at the putter head or
Right.
anything like that. She found that I think in the research that people were not always looking at the putter head, but their gaze was moving, and she found that good putters tended to have a fixed gaze.
Right.
So then after the ball has left the putter face, I would also then keep my gaze where the ball was
Yeah.
for like half a second or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I would look up. So yeah, I remember years ago putting a little video together on my pre-shot routine, and I called it 2+2, as in like just for something catchy that people would remember, just to think like a 2 second look at the target,
Hmm.
then a 2 second look at the ball, then execute. I then actually changed it to 2+2+2 because I like to also take a like before I step into the putt, before I align the putter in my body, I'll usually take two practice strokes
Okay.
to the side of the ball.
Yeah.
But I like a practice stroke. For me, I like a practice stroke that mimics the putt I've got. So if
Mm.
I've got a 10-foot putt, my practice stroke should look like I'm about to roll a 10-foot putt,
Yeah.
30-foot putt. But that's very variable. Like I don't, Cam Smith doesn't take practice strokes.
Right.
Uh, Tiger Woods'
Scotty.
practice stroke is more of a, he just kind of, swishes it back and forth a couple of
Right.
times.
Right.
But I know that like Brad Faxon's talked about, his practice stroke would be more like what I'm talking about. His practice stroke will mimic his putt.
Right.
So there's great putters doing different things there, but I like the practice stroke to mimic my putt.
Yeah. Okay. So as you're looking down at that dimple, are you? Is your kind of mind's eye, your mental attention, is it still on the last 2 second look that you took at the target, or are you thinking about uh, thinking about the putting stroke? You might not be watching the putter. And by the way, I am surprised every single time someone says, "Yeah, I watched the putter as it goes through."
Hmm.
I'm thinking
Yeah,
that sounds like I would go insane trying to do that. I feel
yeah,
like I would miss the ball. But are you? Where is your mental attention? Is it on that dimple, or are you thinking about something
yeah.
else?
I would say that it happens. It does happen quite quick.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
trying not to care too much. It's like 2 seconds, 2 seconds,
yeah.
execute. So yeah, like I feel like there's not a huge amount of time, and I think that was part of the reason from Quiet Eye's research was that this worked. Was if say somebody took a 4 second look at the dimple, that's enough time because I think they've done some research with brainwave activity getting picked up and stuff, and they found that the brainwave activity starts after the 2 seconds or something.
Oh,
I
interesting.
think I really should go and look at this stuff again. I've not looked at it for so long because I've just, learned from it and it influenced me, and to this day I've just stuck with that.
Yes.
Um, but I think that was what they found, that any longer than that, try to focus on the ball, then brainwave activity does start picking up a bit more,
Hmm.
and that can be like, oh yeah, don't pull it, don't hit this too hard or something
Sure.
like that.
Sure.
The doubts can start creeping in.
Yeah.
So it's finding that balance between not rushing it, but not being
Yeah.
not being slow enough that
Yeah.
yeah, you start thinking too much.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's you almost don't want to have the amount of time. You don't even want to think about where is my attention when you kind of don't
Hmm.
want your attention to even be
Yeah.
activated. That's so interesting.
Hmm.
So you uh, speed is something that I encounter a lot with in talking to players. They kind of say, how can you work on speed, or how can you know ahead of time what speed the putt is going to be? How should I be thinking about 26 feet, 26 feet, 26 feet, 26 feet? And I know how hard I hit a 26 footer, so I need to be thinking about that. Bryson maybe pacing off the putt. I know exactly how long the stroke needs to be. So,
Hmm.
how do you think about? How do you know that you're going to have the right speed when you're about to take the putter back?
So I would say I think it helps to have a good putting stroke to to promote. good speed if you like. I don't think
Yeah,
it's essential. I think some people have good speed with a putting stroke I don't deem great,
sure.
but if it works, it works. Who cares?
Right.
So I think it helps to know, like, not only to have a good stroke from that point of view, like what we were talking earlier, a wee bit about acceleration profiles and things like that,
Mm,
but like I know my stroke really well. So like if I've got a 20-foot putt on the course and I hit that ball 25 foot, so I've got a difficult 5 foot putt back, so that's a bad putt. I'm not happy with that putt. I can usually tell right away, did I get a bit quick in the downswing or something, and that's why the ball's gone 5 foot,
mm,
or did that actually feel like a good stroke? And I just misjudged the putt. Like I didn't put the right. I put a good stroke on it, but it would have been better if I'd had a 25-foot putt, not a 20. I might have misjudged it was a bit more downhill than I gave it credit for, or
mm.
so. Like I like that feeling of that was a good stroke. I just misjudged it, or yeah, my stroke fell out there. Obviously, you can't get the putt back if you're playing golf, but the next hole that might help me. That yeah, don't worry about your stroke. Just because sometimes I do. You just your stroke's not as good. But most people I don't think know their stroke that
Yeah,
well.
right.
Like they don't know. Like if I said to a golfer, have you got a fast tempo or a slow tempo?
Mm,
Have you got a short backswing, long follow through, long backswing, short follow through? Do you keep it quite even? Most people are be like, I don't know, I just
yeah,
putt.
yeah,
Whereas, I think it's obviously my coaching bias, but I like golfers to know that stuff.
yeah,
And there's not one way to do it well, but know where you are, and then know. I just think like elite golfers, you'll know this as well. Like they know their games, don't they?
mm, yeah,
Like they know their misses, they know their faults and their tendencies. And I just think like you should know that for putting as well,
right,
and it helps.
right. So maybe it's um, for some it is the okay, it's 25 feet, it's uphill 2 degrees, so I'm going to play it like it's 28 feet, and I know exactly how long my stroke needs to be for 28 feet.
Hmm.
You know, right toe to left toe or whatever, left toe to right toe, and that maybe works for some, but it sounds like for you
Hmm.
it's more of a kind of a internal feeling calibration of
Hmm.
I I've practiced enough to know
Hmm.
this is what a 20 footer feels like. I've kind
Hmm.
of um, I I have just worked on putting enough to where the feeling comes out of me when I see how long a putt
Hmm.
is. Or am I categorizing that?
Yeah, I do. I probably wasn't that clear though. I do quite like I've worked over the years on a baseline putting stroke,
Yeah.
and I've not worked on it crazy intense or anything, but I've done it with a tape measure. So if I take a putter back, I tend to think in inches. If I take a putter back like 20 inches and my follow through is like 15 inches, like I know that stroke. I can do that stroke with my eyes shut now
Right.
and be pretty close to those numbers because I've been doing it a while. So quite often, if I'm playing like a new course, um, I'll go to the putting green before I tee off, and I would put maybe two balls down, and I would roll. I'd find a flat part, and I'd roll a couple of baseline strokes,
Hmm.
and then I would pace out how far they've gone, and then
Oh,
I would
yeah.
roll them back and pace them back again, and I might do that a few times. Um, and if my baseline stroke, I found that for me in the summer, if the greens are decent, like we don't have very fast greens. Like the fastest greens I've ever patted on were not in Scotland. Um,
Right.
our best courses that could have the kind of budget for really good quality greens tend to be links courses.
Right.
So we can't have that fast greens on links courses
Right.
because of the wind.
Yeah.
So we are not used to stump 12, stump 13, things like that. So I would say for me, that putt will quite often go about 30 feet in the summer. And in the winter, that baseline might even go like 20 feet when the greens are really slow.
Mm.
So I'll do a little bit of work off that. Like I know, like so if that's going 30 feet, I will, obviously if you've got a 30 footer that's a little bit uphill, you're not, well, I know I'm going to need to go a bit more than my baseline.
Oh,
So I quite like that kind of stuff. And I know golfers that have got three baselines, like
yeah.
a short, medium, long.
Hmm.
I'm not against golfers working on that stuff if they want to. I don't think many do. Like, I don't think many would. And I think there's definitely golfers out there that would say, no way, that'll kill feel and you can't do that. But you mentioned Bryson. I mean, apparently he's measured every inch out in
Right.
two US Opens, so
Yeah.
it obviously can work.
Right.
But yeah, it's down to the individual, I guess.
Yeah, that's so interesting. The baseline stroke. That's I I I think I do that on my practice strokes sometimes. So that with it's hard to define what does a baseline stroke feel like, but it's just okay. If you closed your eyes and you swung a putter, who cares if there's a ball? Who cares how long the putt might be in your mind? Just swing it. How long
Mm,
does that go? What is that stroke? How far would that ball go? That's interesting
mhm.
because I definitely have that, but I've never measured it, or I never measure putts off of it. I think that could help me.
Mhm.
At the very least, it would be better than I just need to spend 30 minutes on the putting green before a round to hope I just gain a feel.
Mhm.
It's not really systematic what I'm doing before a round. I'm just
Mhm.
trying to hit as many putts as I can.
Yeah.
Whereas that is like a system that you
Mhm.
can try to follow.
Mhm. And there's lots of golfers out there that will have systems for, say, their wedges and things like that,
Right. Clock
but
system.
wouldn't dream of having it for their putting. And
Right.
I'm like, well, why can't you? What's the difference? I know they're not the same, but what's the real difference why you couldn't have a system for your putting if you've got one for your wedges?
Mm,
A lot of people were influenced by like Dave Peltz's wedge system for clock faces and things like that.
right.
And I don't know why you can't do it for putting. I'm not saying you have to, but I don't know. I don't see anything from my knowledge of putting over the years that tells me no, don't do that for putting.
Right.
That's gonna be bad for your putting. In fact, I know people that do it quite successfully. So
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I know we've I'm conscious of your time, but I can't
I'm
not
okay.
ask this. Okay. So does the putter matter?
Yes, I do think it matters. I don't ever claim to be a real expert on putters, putter design, and all these things. I do fit putters, and I've done a lot of putter fitting over the years at my old place of work. I fitted for every major brand we had there,
Mm,
and then now I just work for myself, and I do fit a couple of brands. And I think it matters, but I always think the player matters more. Um, I do think if a golfer's, the better the golfer is at putting, the more they can tell if a putter's right. If you know what I mean,
yeah.
I've turned away so many putter fittings over the years where golfers have came in to me, they've booked a putter fitting, and they say, "Look, I'm putting really bad. I need a new putter. I don't think this putter's working for me anymore." So I'll measure their stroke, look at their putting, and I'll be like, "If you really want a shiny new putter, you can have one." But I'd be guessing a wee bit on the type of putter because things that you use in a putter fitting, like rotational requirements and like those numbers, even for good golfers, can be quite jumping about
Yeah, stroke to stroke.
because of the fact that their putting stroke's not very good and their setup's not very good. And some of the best fittings I've done for people would be like, actually, see if you just go away and work on
Hmm,
this setup and then a couple of ideas in your stroke, come back in a month, we could do a much better putter fitting.
right.
Um, and that would be better. I would generally advise people get some coaching first.
Yeah.
The only times where that hasn't worked is if somebody's putter's like 30 years old or it's like 2 inches too short or two
Yeah.
inches too long. There's something wrong like that. But generally speaking, a lot of people have got pretty decent putters.
Yeah.
So I would always say the person's more important.
Yeah.
And then, like, say if you don't want a putter fitting, like, get solid at putting, get a good setup, get a decent stroke. I'm not talking about working on it for years and years. Then when you go into like a big store or something and test putters, I reckon you'll have a better feel for the type of putter that works.
Mm,
I think there's too many people these days jumping to get like help from putters,
yeah.
like because they're not putting well. Okay, a mallet's going to help me, and at the moment, it's zero torque is going to help me, isn't it?
Mm,
It's like, yeah, those things might give you a bit of help, but like do the do the work first. Like that's probably going to give you the most help that will last the longest. Because how many people are just jumping about putters?
yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think looking for a putter to give you help, it's not a bad thing, but why not work on your putting?
Yes. Right.
That might give you the most help.
Right. Back to what we talked about earlier, kind of check those boxes, and then we can
Yeah.
see, okay, you're still struggling with putting, even though your setup's
Uh-huh.
good, your stroke, your acceleration profile is good.
Yeah.
All those things are great, and you're still putting poorly. Okay,
Hmm.
is it mental? Is it
Hmm.
or is it the putter? Maybe.
Yeah.
But I think most people would find out if they're practicing and dialing in things physically with putting with that putter, they're probably going to
Hmm.
end up liking the putter because oh, wait, I put fine
Hmm.
with this because I just got better at
Yeah.
putting.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I always think an interesting one was when Scottie Scheffler changed to
Yes.
the mallet, and it was about maybe like February, March, like last year or something. And the reason I remember is because it came up not that long ago, a couple of months ago, that tournament. This is, it was 1 year ago that Scotty changed to the mallet, and I think he won the first tournament. And then Rory had said in the TV a couple of weeks before that he thought Scotty should move to mallet, and then he did. And then people were like, "Oh, he owes Rory a thank you,"
Right.
or "Oh, that mallet." But he'd been working with Phil Kenyon for like, I don't know, 6 months at that point,
Right.
and I have no idea. I have no inside info to what they were doing, but my guess is the 6 months of work he'd been doing on his putting led to him being able to test some putters and go, yeah, this actually, like,
Yeah.
he did the work before he changed his putter,
Mm.
but the average golf fan was like, yeah, he's
It's the
changed to
putter.
the mallet, and that
Yeah.
made him a better putter.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah, like I mean, I think he did visibly look quite different in his posture and setup and everything from if you look at videos of him putting pre Phil Kenyon.
hmm
And I would imagine it was an insane amount of work as well,
mm,
like that normal people can't comprehend. Like
right.
he didn't just like I mean he was getting pictured putting in the dark and all that, wasn't he, when he was struggling? Like it's not a lack of work.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would always say do the work. But I
Yeah.
know a lot of people don't have time as well. Some people are just happy to find the time to get around to golf.
Right.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't be shocked if a new putter doesn't fix you.
Yeah. Yeah. And Scotty, I think famously doesn't have social media or something, or doesn't pay attention at all to what people say. But if he were to tune in and see how people say, "Oh, the putter, that's what changed it," that would probably
Yeah,
be pretty insulting to to
yeah,
Scotty to
yeah.
say, "You guys
Uh-huh.
think it was I changed this putter and I was suddenly jumped up all this putting. I put in all
Yeah,
this work." Yeah.
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 Definitely. I remember I went to the PGA show in Orlando in 2019,
hmm
and Brad Faxon was doing a little talk on a artificial putting green with a microphone,
hmm
and I was watching it, and it was fascinating. Obviously, he's one of the greatest putters of all time, and he said something along the lines of like he always got a little riled when people said to him they were trying to be complimentary, but they talked to him like he was born a great putter, and it
Right.
was like,
Yes.
oh, it's almost like, oh, you're so lucky to have been such a good putter.
Right.
But he was like, I've worked really hard on my putting for
Yeah.
decades
Yeah.
to be such a good putter. I put in a lot of work to be here. Yeah, he wasn't born a good putter.
Right. That's
He
a myth.
made,
That's one of the myths that you're
yeah,
kind of talking about, of people to think you're either a good putter or you're not.
yeah,
And that's a
yeah.
myth.
It's such a closed mindset as well.
Right.
Because not only is it probably false. I mean, there's obviously some people are just naturally better at things than
Sure.
others. But yeah, you can definitely get better at anything.
Right.
Um, Obviously, we'll all have our ceilings. Can't all be Brad Faxon or Scottie Scheffler, but yeah, you can definitely get better. You probably noticed me say this. I hate the idea of people accepting bad putting.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I'll meet people in social occasions, it could be a wedding or something. Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a golf coach. Oh, I play golf, and then, like, well, I'm just a putting coach. I'm beyond help.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I'm the worst putter ever. There's
Yeah.
nothing you could do for me. And I'm like, no, you're my ideal student if you're the worst putter ever, because
Yeah.
you're the easiest person to help. Actually,
Yeah.
you're not beyond help. If you're as bad as you say you are, you're the easiest student to have.
Yeah.
If it's that bad.
Brad Faxon is
Uh,
beyond help, right? That direction, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Huh. That's so interesting. So we're talking about changing putters a lot. That brings to mind putting yips. So I'm sure this is something you think about. And I uh, people's first go to is usually I got to change the putter. The putter is going to help me get rid of the yips.
Mm.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts on putting yips? Like, what is it? How can you get out of it? What's going on there? Do you think?
I do believe that in most cases, and I always get pushback when I say this, I do believe in most cases it's come around through poor fundamentals to begin with.
Okay.
And I totally understand why people push back on that,
Yeah.
especially people with experience of yips, because what they'll say is, "Have you ever experienced yips?" And I'll say, "No, I've never had yips." But I'm a coach. I've coached a lot of people with yips, not loads, but I have coached. I think I don't get that many people with yips.
Sure.
Like I think a lot of people with real yips think there's nothing they can do about it,
Yes. Right.
and they just they they
They're snake
they
bitten. Yeah.
they just play golf or they give up golf.
Right.
They play with the yips or they give up. So for someone who's been coaching putting for 12 years, I wouldn't claim to have huge experience of coaching people with yips,
Sure.
which has surprised me. I would have thought I'd get quite
That's
a lot of
all you would
people.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think it's an overused term for starters.
Okay.
I think real yips is very noticeable and quite scary, and
Dramatic. Yep.
it's actually quite tough to look at when you watch a putter head going through impact
Mm,
with real yips. But yeah, I think like having good fundamentals that I keep going on about is a good way to give you the best chance of never dealing with yips.
mm,
Um, but yeah, it is an interesting topic. I
yeah.
think it's something, people have done, doctorates on it and
Right.
things like that, haven't they?
Yeah.
And all sorts. And I don't think anyone's really nailed down the issue of
Mm,
exactly what it is, exactly what causes it, and exactly how to fix it.
right.
I think it's case, but it's pretty much a problem in the dominant hand.
Mm,
I know that most of the research that I'm aware of has come to that. That's one of the things they can be pretty sure about.
mm,
So right-handed golfer, it's usually something they're doing with their right hand.
yeah.
That's why like claw grips and pencil grips have become good ways to deal with it. But I
Mm,
would always try and get people to, the people I do, I'm actually working with somebody just now with yips, and we haven't rushed to a claw grip because I was like, his setup, his normal grip was really bad. His posture was really bad, his setup. And I was like, well, let's go with that first,
yeah.
and see. And then the next time he came to see me, he had made slight improvements to the point I was like, I said to him, I felt like there was a good chance you were going to come in today and we probably will go with like a claw or something like that.
Yeah.
And we didn't.
Yeah.
So he should be due to come in soon, hopefully, and we'll see where he is.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's an interesting topic. I don't think
Yeah.
it's easy. But yeah, I think the best chance you've got of future proofing yourself is by having a good setup. Don't be over reliant on your hands for putting.
Mm,
And I don't mean don't use them, but I think most people set up in a way that their hands have to really take over a lot.
right.
I think that's a recipe for potential yips.
Yeah.
Whether it takes 20, 30, 40 years to kick in,
Sure.
I think that gives you a higher chance.
Mm,
If you just think about hand-eye coordination, if you've got good aim, good setup, you don't use your hands too much. You use your hands. I don't lock them or anything like that, but you still need hand-eye coordination to execute that putting stroke. If you've spent 20, 30 years aiming right, having to hit little pools back onto your line or big pools. You're having to reroute the putter a wee bit. It just requires a little bit more hand-eye coordination, doesn't it?
Mm.
And that can take its toll, especially over time, I believe.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I love the fundamentals first approach that you got. I think that's awesome.
Hmm.
With whatever you're struggling with, let's just kind of slide everything to the side. Let's get the fundamentals dialed in and then see where we're at. I think I'm going to use that for my own putting. I'm going to use that for my own coaching, how I talk with players. I think
Hmm.
that's really good. Okay. Ross Macleod, thank you so much. Where would you send people? What do you want to show off to people? What do you want people to go look at of yours?
So I'm most active on X,
Okay. Yeah.
where we've connected. I do use Instagram, Facebook. I've even got TikTok, but I've not got a lot of content on there. I find the content side of things quite difficult to keep up with.
Same.
I feel like if I was doing that every single day on all platforms, I don't think I'd be coaching, if you know what I mean. Like I think it would be like, and I first and foremost, I'm a coach.
Yeah.
That's what I'm passionate about. But yeah, X. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm Ross McLeod putting pretty much everywhere.
Hmm.
Twitter, you don't have enough characters for that. It's Ross
Sure.
McLeod Putt.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I'm Ross McLeod putting on Instagram and YouTube and things like that. And I do online coaching. My website is rossmcleodputting.com. I do online coaching as well, and yeah, you would find all the details on my website, and yeah,
Awesome.
X would be where I'm most active.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. He's very great stuff on if you're interested in improving your putting, follow Ross on X. It's awesome stuff. Like that's where I got most of the material from. What I want to talk to you about is just your thinking on the mechanics of putting, but also the psychology of putting. You dabble
Hmm.
in both, so it's really fascinating. So Ross, I really appreciate your time. Everyone go check out Ross. Go get a putting lesson, get a putting coach. We clearly all need one. Thanks, Ross.
No problem. Pleasure. Thank you.